ever feel like there's this pressure to like hit certain life milestones, you know?
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into a place where that pressure is dialed up to 11.
Oh,
Marriage before you can even vote.
wow.
We're talking about girls in the Horseshoe region of East Java, Indonesia.
Okay.
And our source is this academic article. It's
Mm,
called The Causes and Impacts of Early Marriage: The Ordeal of Girls in East Java, Indonesia.
heavy stuff.
Yeah, and
I'm ready.
it's a really complex picture.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it really challenges our assumptions about marriage as like a choice, you know?
Totally. Like, one
Mm.
of the things that just jumped out at me was that in some of these communities, more girls are married by 16 or 17
Wow.
than even go to college.
That's young.
Yeah, and that is just a huge difference from what we think of as normal in so many other parts of the world.
It really is. I mean, that just highlights how much location and culture shape what we consider normal for young women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we really get into the whys and hows, let's set the scene.
Great. Where even is this horseshoe region?
Okay, so picture the eastern part of Java Island in Indonesia.
Gotcha.
And the horseshoe, or Tapal Kuda, as the locals call it,
Hmm.
it includes these places like Pasuruan, Probolinggo.
Okay.
Beautiful areas,
Yeah.
known for their scenery,
Hmm.
but also this unfortunately high rate of early marriage.
And it's not like Indonesia hasn't tried to change things.
Right.
They raised the legal marriage age to 19 for everyone back in 2018.
Yeah, you'd think that would have a
Yeah.
big impact.
Yeah.
But laws don't always change deeply held traditions, right?
Right.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And especially in the more rural parts of the horseshoe,
Hmm.
those older norms around girls marrying young, they still have a lot of power.
So why is early marriage so common here?
Yeah.
Is it just like a purely economic thing?
I mean, it'd be easy to just say it's about poverty,
Right.
but the researchers found it's not that simple.
Mm.
There's this whole web of social and cultural pressures.
All kind of intertwined with those economic factors.
Yeah.
Like one of the big ones is this fear of daughters becoming spinsters.
Oh, wow.
Parents, they feel this intense pressure
Oh, wow.
to marry their daughters young just to avoid that social stigma.
It makes you wonder if the parents even feel trapped by these social expectations.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And you know what's really fascinating is that even with this backdrop of all this pressure, a lot of girls choose to marry young.
Oh, so it's not always like a forced marriage situation.
Not necessarily.
Mm.
The study found that most of the girls they talked to agreed to the marriage,
Okay.
but their reasons, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Influence from, romantic movies and stuff,
Well,
peer pressure, wanting to escape their parents' control, or even just difficult situations at home.
so it's like they're choosing the perceived freedom of marriage
Right.
over whatever restrictions they face as unmarried daughters.
Exactly. And then there's this whole other thing, this
Yeah.
nikah situation.
Okay, I gotta admit, I am not familiar with that term.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Nikah. It's a marriage that's recognized religiously, but not legally
Oh, okay.
by the government.
Gotcha.
It's really common in the horseshoe. And it makes tracking these early marriages, especially the ones before the legal age, really tough.
So it's like a secret marriage, at least legally.
Pretty much, yeah.
So once these girls are married, then what happens to their lives?
Right.
Is it actually like a path to a better life, or is there more to the story?
That's where the research takes a turn and highlights the hidden cost of these early marriages.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the big picture, but I'm really curious about the girls themselves.
Right.
Like, did they feel like getting married actually made their lives better?
Yeah. The researchers, they did these in-depth interviews
Hmm.
with 30 girls from all across the region, and their stories really put faces to these statistics. Like,
Yeah.
there's this one girl, Liz,
Hmm.
who got married at just 13, and she felt like her parents were supportive,
Okay.
even expressed relief at having one less mouth to feed, so to speak.
13 is so young.
I know.
I can't imagine feeling that kind of pressure at that age.
Right.
It really makes you think about what support really means in this situation, doesn't it?
For sure, like, is it really support?
Yeah.
If it's driven by economic hardship,
Right.
fear of social stigma,
Right.
then you have cases like Dia,
Mm.
who was 15 when she married a friend of her father's.
Oh, wow.
And she admitted to being scared,
Yeah.
but ultimately felt she had no choice.
Wow.
Like her parents, they constantly drilled into her that she had to marry quickly or she'd become a spinster.
So a mix of social pressure and economic factors
Right.
pushing these girls towards marriage.
Yeah.
But did they at least see it as a path to a better life?
A lot of them did.
Okay.
You have to remember, poverty is a huge issue in this region.
Right.
And a lot of these girls, they saw marriage as an escape from that hardship, either for themselves or their families. And the study did find that most girls felt their economic situation was better after marriage,
Interesting.
but it often came at a cost.
What kind of cost?
Well, pretty much all of them had to sacrifice their education.
Oh, wow.
A lot of them had to drop out of school,
Yeah.
even those who initially wanted to keep studying.
Wow.
Imagine having your dreams put on hold indefinitely.
Yeah.
They essentially traded one form of hardship for another,
Right.
becoming trapped in this cycle of housework and childcare,
Yeah.
with very little opportunity for personal growth or economic independence.
It's like trading one cage for another.
Exactly.
And the study mentions that even some of the girls who did see an improvement in their finances still weren't happy in their marriages.
That's right. This goes back to that emotional immaturity we're talking about.
Yeah.
A lot of these girls, they're influenced by romantic media.
Mm-hmm.
So they had these kind of unrealistic expectations about what marriage was going to be like.
Yeah.
And the reality, especially when you're that young, can be pretty jarring. They're grappling with incompatibility, lack of emotional support, and in a lot of cases, abuse.
These stories are really heartbreaking.
Yeah,
The research gets pretty dark here.
it does. While most of the girls said they hadn't experienced physical violence,
Okay.
a really disturbing number reported verbal abuse, being controlled by their husbands, and feeling trapped.
Oh, wow.
Some even talked about being forced to have sex,
Oh, no.
even when they were sick or exhausted.
Oh,
It's
that's awful.
really tough to hear.
One girl, Sar,
Yeah.
described her husband as constantly angry, yelling at her, hitting her.
Yeah.
And she said she had to obey everything he said or it would get worse.
Awful.
And then there's Myrrh, who
No.
talked about being criticized every day,
Yeah.
often for things like her cooking not being good enough.
Sure.
Her husband called her useless
Wow.
and told her she was sinning if she talked back to him.
It really highlights those patriarchal attitudes
Right.
that leave these young wives with so little power
Yeah.
or autonomy in their marriages.
It's hard to hear those stories and think that some girls chose marriage for independence.
Yeah.
It's like they're trading one form of control for another.
Right, and that's such a crucial point.
Mm.
This is why addressing this issue requires a deeper understanding of the cultural and social forces at play,
Mm-hmm.
the power dynamics within families, and the limited options available to these girls.
Right.
It's a complicated problem with no easy solutions.
So where do we go from here? The
Okay.
study mentions some possible solutions.
Right.
What are some of the most promising ones?
To me, education is key,
Okay.
and not just for girls, but for boys as well.
Interesting.
Education can empower girls to make informed choices about their lives and their futures.
Mm-hmm.
It can challenge those harmful gender norms
Right.
and expectations
Yeah.
and show them that their worth isn't just tied to being married and having kids.
Wouldn't that also mean we need to address the economic side of things?
Yep.
Like, if families are marrying off their daughters because they think it's the only way out of poverty, then education alone might not be enough.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Creating economic opportunities and
Yeah.
providing support to struggling families,
Hmm.
those are essential pieces of this puzzle.
Yeah.
We need to show these girls that they have options,
Right.
that they can build a future for themselves on their own terms.
It sounds like a huge challenge.
It is.
Like a whole societal shift.
Yeah,
But the study offers some hope, right?
it does.
It's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not.
Rin.
I mean, it emphasizes that legal changes like raising the minimum age for marriage are important,
Mm-hmm.
but they're only the first step. We need to go beyond that.
Okay.
We need to shift those social norms,
Yeah.
empower girls,
Yeah.
and give them genuine choices and opportunities.
Right.
And that requires a collective effort
Yeah.
from communities, governments, and individuals.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to untangle generations of like traditions and beliefs.
Right.
It's a big task, but it sounds like it's not impossible.
Definitely possible, but I think it requires us to shift our perspective.
Mm.
We have to remember that early marriage isn't just a problem over there.
Uh-huh.
It's a global issue.
Yeah.
It affects all of us.
Right.
When girls are denied their rights and opportunities, it holds everyone back.
So what can we do, like, as individuals?
Right.
People who might be far removed from this specific situation
Yeah.
to help make that shift happen.
I think staying informed and talking about these issues is huge.
Okay.
Like raising awareness, challenging those harmful stereotypes we all encounter.
Yeah.
Even those small acts can make a difference.
So it's not enough to just listen to this deep dive and then move on with our lives.
Exactly. Like engage with the material,
Mm.
talk about it with others, support organizations that are working to empower girls and end child marriage.
Hmm.
There are so many ways to get involved, even from afar.
You mentioned earlier those Nikasiri marriages, the ones that kind of fly under the radar.
Right.
How do we even begin to address something like that?
That's a tough one.
Mm.
The study really emphasizes the need for better data collection and monitoring.
Right.
If we don't even know how big the problem is, it's hard to come up with solutions.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces.
Exactly.
And it sounds like working with those local communities is super important too.
Yeah,
They have to be a part of finding the solution.
absolutely. Top-down approaches, they rarely work.
Right.
You have to engage with religious leaders, community elders, families,
Yeah.
understand their perspectives, and work together to create real lasting change.
It really does take a village, doesn't it?
It really does. And that village needs to have the right tools and resources,
What do you mean?
like things like comprehensive sexuality education,
Okay.
creating safe spaces for girls to speak up, and strengthening those legal frameworks to protect them.
I'm realizing that we can learn a lot from what's happening in East Java, even if our own situations are different.
Absolutely.
Like it highlights how interconnected these issues are.
Exactly.
Poverty, gender inequality, cultural norms.
You got it. And it really emphasizes that need for those holistic, community-driven solutions.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
We've covered so much today.
We have.
What's the one thing you hope people listening will take away from this deep dive?
I think early marriage is a complex issue with some really serious consequences.
Yeah.
And tackling it requires us to be empathetic, understanding, and willing to challenge those deep-seated beliefs and practices.
I love that. And I'll add this. Each and every one of us has a part to play in making sure that girls everywhere can choose their own futures.
That's a great point.
Doesn't matter where we live or what our background is, we can all help create a world where girls are empowered to thrive.
Here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
If a lot of girls see early marriage as a way to become independent, what other paths could we create
Yeah.
to empower them to choose their own futures? What would those look like?
That's a really good question, something to think about.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you keep learning, stay engaged, and let's work together to make that vision a reality.